Time now for the exchange. Our next guest is the author of A Sultan in Autumn. Erdogan faces Turkey's uncontainable forces. Soner Çağatay joins us now from Washington, D.C. Soner, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure.
Clearly, we have seen images now that harken back to 2013 and the Gezi Park protests that we saw back in Turkey. Erdogan obviously survived that moment in time. I'm curious as to whether you think this will be any different in terms of his future as president of the country, and whether or not he will be able to quell the rise in protests that we've now seen over the last few days.
Certainly, not only Erdogan's political career is approaching an inflection point, but also Turkey's 8-decade-old democracy. Turkey, analysts, including myself, has so far described Turkey's political system that has emerged in the last 10 years with Erdogan's power centralization as competitive authoritarianism. I think by removing his key opponent, who's likely to defeat him in the elections, President Erdogan is removing the adjective competitive from the system, competitive authoritarian system, and Turkey sadly is evolving to look more like Belarus. President Erdogan has taken over many of the country's independent institutions, courts and media outlets, and he's also relying on the fact that he has curbed freedom of expression, media and assembly to such an extent that he can continue with a crackdown against the protests and also get away with arresting his key opponent.
It's interesting because Imamoglu talked about fighting back, that he's going to fight back. I'm just curious how he's going to manage to do that, especially when you consider the fact that his university, of course, also annulled his diploma, which could, of course, preclude him from a presidential bid anyway, assuming that he is released. So just explain to us what options he has to fight back here.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of ironic because President Erdogan, too, when he was the mayor of Istanbul in the 1990s, was arrested on sham and phony grounds. And this time, I think the voters are looking at this idea that Imamoglu graduated from college many years ago, and now his diploma is being revoked. And in Turkey's constitution, you need to have a university degree to be president. They're saying that doesn't look right. So what is Imamoglu going to do? I think that his greatest strength is the Imamoglu brand. Like President Erdogan, Istanbul Mayor Imamoglu is a relatable and charismatic politician. He's also from Anatolia, Turkey's hinterland, is pious and nationalist, all Erdogan-like qualities. However, unlike President Erdogan, whose base is exclusively constituted by right-wing voters, Mayor Imamoglu has a base of right-wing voters, but also centrist and left-wing voters. So it's a broad base. That's why President Erdogan feels mortally threatened by him. Many other politicians have won elections from jail. I can think of Nelson Mandela. It's not inconceivable that if Imamoglu and his party, CHP, play a smart role, he can make a comeback. But I think President Erdogan is relying on his incumbency advantages, his state capture that has Turkey experienced under him, and his complete control of institutions, believing that he can overwhelm the protesters and the Imamoglu factor in Turkish politics.
One of the things that's driving so many people to the streets, not only is this arrest, but just discontent with the economy over the last few years. And we've seen the government there support some $12 billion into the government now. They're into propping up the lira. We know that Erdogan has also been trying to prop up the economy, which has spiked inflation as well. At what point do you think he loses control as it relates to the economy alone, disregarding sort of, his attempt to move towards authoritarianism?
Certainly. One of the reasons I think President Erdogan decided to move against Mayor Imamoglu, although there are no presidential elections in Turkey scheduled until 2028, is that the economy has been really in bad shape. Erdogan has won elections mainly on a platform of growth. Turkey is suffering from high inflation. Electorate is discontented with the situation. And the opposition and Imamoglu were both calling for early elections. And I think Erdogan decided to nip him in the bud. Maybe he'll be able to do that. However, how will the markets react? Now, Turkey's economy, to make a comeback, needs financial inflows globally. Turkey is a resource-poor country. And I think markets will look at Turkey and say, wait a minute, this system is going from competitive authoritarianism to authoritarian system, looks like Belarus. Do I really want to put money in there? So markets, I think, are the only factor, which is also the only thing about Turkey over which President Erdogan has no control, could change President Erdogan's behavior going forward if they react negatively and say, hey, we want to see free and fair elections in this country if we're going to put money into this country.
Just in terms of what you said earlier about, at first it was competitive authoritarianism, and with the arrest of Imamoglu, they've removed the adjective competitive. What do you make of how the government is fighting back against these protests? They've banned protests in major cities. They've banned unlimited access to social media as well at times. And then you have the fact that they have sort of released all of these leaks trying to prove Imamoglu's guilt. What do you make of how the government is handling this?
Sadly, the system looks to be moving towards a more purely authoritarian system, and I think President Erdogan will bring out all his instruments to suppress the protesters. The police has already arrested thousands. The protests could grow or not at this point. We're at an inflection point. Turkey was a democracy twice longer than Erdogan has been in power. It's a resilient democratic society. A lot of people are out on the streets. President Erdogan, I guess, could crack down using the police. He could also use his complete control of the media and institutions and courts to frame Imamoglu with these allegations that he is corrupt, he's nepotistic, he rigged tenders, and he supports terrorism, all in quotes, of course. And maybe this will make an impact with the voters. I think Erdogan relies on his ability to shape the narrative. And he also relies on the global environment, which is permissive. Turkey has become a middle power under Erdogan. It plays Russia, US, and Europe against each other. And Erdogan believes that there will be no international pushback, unlike when he was arrested in 1999. And at the time, the global community supported him. And Turkey's free press, it was a democracy at the time, supported his cause, and civil society organizations. So while Erdogan and Imamoglu are going through similar processes of being arrested, Erdogan is trying to deny Imamoglu the instruments that helped Erdogan make framed as the representative of the common voter persecuted by the elites. If Imamoglu can now become the new representative of the common voter persecuted by elites, he'll win. If Erdogan denies him that role, Erdogan will win.
And notable to hear Trump envoy Steve Witkoff over the weekend in an interview say that the President Erdogan and President Trump had a phone call recently, that they have a very good relationship, and there'll be more headlines coming out of this relationship in the days to come. Soner Chaptai, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.